Welcome and thank you for tuning in to the Believe in Yourself podcast. I'm your host, Mr. Believe, better known as KevBiyi, man. And if you yourself are interested in creating your own podcast, let me show you how to do it, man. Let me give you some great advice. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. I only need two things real quick. Listen in close. Number one, it's free. That should say it all right there. But if that's not enough, number two, you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. That means you can start making money from day one on your podcast and start putting that money to good use. So, let me give you the information. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. That's ANCHOR.FM to get started today. And I want to hear your podcast. Peace. Hey, it's Mr. Believe, and I want to tell you about Unique African Boutique. It is a beautiful collection of authentic clothing, jewelry, accessories, and art that are made with the highest quality from artisans in Africa. What you get from Unique African Boutique, you can't get from anywhere else. Our entire collection is made up of one-of-a-kind pieces that promote the culture, music, and lifestyle of Africa, with care for the artisans and their families and their livelihood. Shop Unique African Boutique today at shopuniqueafricanboutique.com. Welcome to the Believe in Yourself podcast. Today I have a special guest for you guys, man. I can't wait till we get started. Guest is actually my brother. I think it's Died to Lead. I'm going to be interviewing Mr. Gregory Akinbiyi today. Remember, with the Believe in Yourself podcast, if you guys want to join the community, get all the updates, find out what's going on with Believe in Yourself, just text BIY to 31996. That's BIY to 31996. As well as you'll be able to find out different announcements as far as the Black Dollar Challenge, and you'll be able to participate in all the different discounts and special gifts that we're going to be giving yourself, as well as keeping up with the Black Dollar Challenges and the episodes, what we're going to be having, everything else.
Should I put it the other way?
Yes, bro. I think you should put it the other way.
Oh, man. Let me see if I can find a way to hold it up.
How you doing, man? You looking good.
I'm trying to, man. You know, not everybody can look like KevBiyi. So I got to do what I can do to be me.
Oh, man.
Let me see.
Well,
Let me just do this.
So how's your day been going so far, man? Where are you now exactly?
Yeah, bro. Oh, good. Yeah, I'm in Durham, man.
Back in Durham?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So how's your day been going so far? How's the weather been?
It's been okay. I have heads down. I've just had my head down in some client work all day today. So not a whole lot of anything else I can report on other than eating and sitting in front of a computer for the majority of the day. But yeah, man, it's going good. Got a lot of exciting stuff going on, and you know, happy to be here, man. Happy to be on the live.
Definitely, I'm happy to have you, bro. It's been a long time coming. Since you didn't get to really experience the climate or the weather today, what do you think about the climate of our country right now?
Yeah, man, it's tough. I think, I'm a really big advocate of really understanding the issues, understanding why and how do we get here, and I think what's good, I would say, is that people are paying attention in ways that they haven't before previously. I think what's sad is if you go to the majority of the popular news outlets, you won't really get to the bottom of the issue. You get a lot of clickbait and reasons to be mad. So I think that what is most disappointing about this time is how a lot of the journalists or analysts, depending on where you get your news and, depending on how deep you're trying to go into the issues, are not really helpful. And so what's really been good is digging into books and really trying to understand how we got to where we are and having conversation with people who are thinking about it in a more deep way than what the media would just want you to get us and them kind of methodologies on how to handle it. So I think it's really sad, it's disappointing, but it's also really good. I think things are being shaken up. How optimistic am I? Depends on the day as far as what's going to come out of it. We'll see. Time will tell, I think, unfortunately. But I think it's a good opportunity to speak up, to really learn, to ask really hard questions as well. How about yourself? What you think about it?
I totally agree, man. I think it's good. I think it's a good thing that there's a lot of uncertainty because it forces people to have those tough questions and conversations that normally wouldn't be at the forefront. Just like, working out in the gym and things like that. You have to go through that sore period where you're feeling like, oh my gosh, what did I get myself into? You have to go through that before you can actually get to the good results. So right now, I feel like we're getting into that part of the conversation where it's uncomfortable. We have to talk about the elephant in the room now. Like it's not just to the side. People have to have these conversations, and I think it's good for our country overall.
Yeah, no doubt, man. I think I echo what you're saying. I think it's good, and we'll see. I think we talk about this a lot. I'm curious what type of leaders will be cultivated. I think everybody has the capacity to lead. Do we reach our capacity? I think that depends on a lot of things, but I'm curious to see what type of leaders develop in families, individually, in companies, and in our future society. That's going to be really interesting to see how these times and moments shape us. That's for sure.
True. That's true. What do you think about this election coming up?
Yeah, man. I'm gonna let the cat out the bag. I'm definitely not a fan of the two-party system. So I think the challenge that we have with the gentleman that's currently in the White House, Trump, I think the good thing about Trump, if I'm going to be honest, is that Trump is making everybody pay attention. I think even for somebody like myself who didn't really understand natural rights or understanding the difference between Dixiecrats and all of this stuff and the history of how do we get to where we are and why is it that Trump is so persuasive to a number of people, and they're willing to look the other way on things that he says or things that he's done. I think it's really fascinating. I think it's really making us pay attention in ways that I personally have not before. I don't know if that's just because of age, or it's because he has been that effective in captivating our attention as a country. But I think this election is right now. It's unfortunate. I think if I was to just step back a little bit, what I would hope that this election really allows us to do, regardless of who wins, is that it creates an opportunity for people to have real conversations. I think the single issue voters, whether it's based upon abortion or based upon, marriage equality or whatever it is, I hope that we can have bigger conversations in terms of labor, in terms of healthcare, in terms of just what does it generally mean for us to truly build a society for people to flourish. And I think what's unfortunate is that that's not generally what the conversation is about. It's like either you're for us or you're against us, and we don't really get into the gutter of it. So I'm hoping this election, either side, I'm definitely not a fan of Trump. I mean, he's an entertaining guy. He captivates our attention, but as far as leadership quality and capability, I would say that he's lacking. So, for that position, you can't have gaping holes like the way he does. So, for what it's worth,
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you to an extent as well. I definitely feel like the two-party system is a sham. I feel like I don't feel like whenever you have to choose between the lesser of two evils, and people are using that sentiment on what they're saying they want to vote for, I feel like the whole thing is to be reformed. If that's what the case comes down to. I do like that Trump has forced people to wake up and allow people to start looking like, what can I do for myself? Because this government, I don't know what's going to happen. So one aspect of it is making people take more ownership on their life instead of just hoping that some guy is going to make sure everything's okay. And understand that you have to make sure everything's okay. So that's what I like this climate right now. 2020 to me has been a good year for reasons that some people may think it's a bad year. So I feel like to get to that other side or get through the huff, or whenever you have to make it somewhere or do something, you have to go through some adversity.
Yeah.
We both played for Coach G, and he always say this comment, your measure of a man is what happens when he meets that adversity. So what are you going to do now that there's adverse times? What type of person are you going to be? Are you that person that you say you are every time you look in the mirror?
Right. Yeah. Shout out to Coach G. Coach Guandala.
So now that we got people tuning in, I thank everybody you guys for tuning in and tuning into this Believe in Yourself podcast. If you haven't noticed, the person on the other side of the screen, people say he somewhat resembles me. I don't really see it that much. I
don't believe it.
The person that I had a few weeks earlier resembles me a little bit more, my little sister. But this is my baby brother right here, or my big little brother, because he's bigger than me now. It's so long. Just to give a little background, me and Greg grew up in the same household, of course. This is my brother. And he's definitely somebody to me who I've always looked at as someone who inspired me to want to do better or do more because of just his drive and his ambition and how he goes for things. Like Greg, when he says he's going to do something, there's no stopping, there's no holds bar. He's going 110%. And I've always loved that about him. And it always made me look at myself and say, you can do more, Kev. So Greg, before I don't want to get into too much, I want you to give the people more about what you do and how you got started into doing what you're doing now.
Yeah, man. Well, I just want to say, Kev, I appreciate you, man. I love you. Really honored to be on your podcast. What's so funny is I see the Kevin that's emerged. I remember the Kevin that was quiet. Nobody knew what the heck Kevin was thinking, what Kevin was doing. And so what's so cool is to see how, for lack of a better term, if you've come out of your shell and there's a greater, I would say, just willingness to learn in public, to own your story. So, man, I just admire that about you. And, because me, I'm not on, I have an Instagram, but I don't know what to post. And I'm like, man, all these nosy people who want to know what I'm doing, it's none of your business. But to see you putting it out there and doing your thing, man, it's admirable. So, big shout outs to you. For those, yeah, no doubt, bro. And that's the only reason I'm on here right now, I'm like, man, Kev asked me, so I'm going to do it. So, man, I feel like I've done so many different things over the past 5 years. But long story short, as Kev said, grew up together, had the privilege and opportunity to play football in college. Thankful for that. Shout out to Coach Guandolo again. Had a good opportunity to play in the ACC. Was a captain on the football team, did things like that. And I would say once I left there, I think one of the things that I've always wanted is probably this idea of changing the world and wanting to make an impact. And I think that was instilled obviously from my parents of, it doesn't matter what everyone else is doing, but how you show up, is the one thing you can control. So went from college, undergrad, worked in campus ministry for about 7 years. And I honestly, even to today, that is probably the hardest job I've ever had. Just from the amount of hours I worked, I was working anywhere from about, 60 to 80 hours a week on my feet, walking around, talking to people, planning events. So I feel like the hours and things that I do now are pale in comparison. But went from there because I really started to realize I had a real passion to thinking in systems. And so went into database administration, working on Salesforce. So I learned Salesforce and got certified, worked at one of the top consulting firms. Shout out to Coastal Cloud and them giving me an opportunity to be on their team. Did that. And then I got a bug for wanting to build products. Didn't think it was enough to, trade dollars for hours. And so went out and worked in San Francisco, had a great opportunity to work out there, learned a lot, met a lot of really brilliant and smart people. Then came back to Durham, got into more around product strategy and helping companies and people think through digital products and how do you create value. And then recently just started my own company where the primary focus is integrated around this idea of growth architecture of how do you build systems for growth. Everybody wants to grow, but as we know from football, but I think just generally in business, not everybody's really willing to do what it takes. And so thinking through growth architecture, and that bleeds into organizational strategy along with leadership development. So those are kind of the big three things, but we got a little bit of a pause. Still there?
Thank you for tuning in to the Believe in Yourself podcast. Now I'm your host, Gregory Akinbiyi, and I just want to say thank you to everyone who's been tuning into these episodes. And I pray, and my prayer is that everyone has been getting some type of inspiration, motivation, or even some tips and tricks of the trade that they can use in their everyday journey or lives into entrepreneurship, professionalism, or just downright living. Now, if you want some more from our guests on the show, we're eventually going to be partnering with them and bringing you some special discounted items later on. So if you love these guests and love the things that they have to offer and you would love to support and build the community, all you need to do is text BIY to 31996. That's BIY to 31996. And let's grow this community together. Peace.
So yeah. I think I got a notification that came through. That's probably what it was.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, man, so that's kind of what I'm up to these days is growth architecture and organizational strategy work. So I'm working for myself right now and focusing in on the credit union space. I think credit unions, for a lot of people who are thinking about this divide, even as we go through this time right now between local banks or local communities and Wall Street, and how is it that the inequality gap continues to expand, I would challenge you to bank with a credit union. For many of you, you're not traveling that much, so having a Bank of America or Wells Fargo is not really going to do you all that well. So if you want lower interest rates and really invest in your own community, credit unions are a great way to go. So I can talk more about that, but I think that those are opportunities, particularly in a capitalist system, where your dollar actually moves a lot of things. And I know you're really big on that as well. But anyway, I'll stop there.
Wow, that's a lot, bro. But I like that you said was that you worked the hardest those first 7 years when you were doing campus ministry. I remember when you were doing the campus ministry and you had to, raise, sponsorships and things like that as well. And then you got to do all this.
Yeah, man.
Do you feel like working that hard and doing that, because it was mostly your effort that you had to build your own ministry? Do you feel like that kind of prepared you for where you are today?
Yeah, man, there's so many lessons that I still continue to draw upon from that time. I think one, and it's so interesting. I remember when I was in San Francisco, there was a colleague of mine. She asked me, she said, "Greg, you were in ministry, what, like you were in the religious world. Like, how does that relate to this?" And I was like, I don't have enough time to tell you how much it relates. But I think some of the high level things is just the emotional responsibility. And what I mean, I'm not just talking about like not crying or things like that, but really being in tune and aware of like, what am I feeling? Because it's a very lonely journey. I think as much as we can go down an entire rabbit trail on this, but it's very lonely when all you have is this thought and an idea, and it's just you and God. It's like, I mean, I had family members who thought I was crazy. You know, I had friends who thought it was a good idea, but they weren't willing to support. So it was a very lonely journey. And I was living in the house with 3 other guys, but it felt so lonely because nobody really understood, like, the fact that I had no cushion. I had no other support. And so it really made me dig deep. The other thing, it really began to teach me a lot about sales and communication and telling stories and how do you really invite people into this journey as you're processing through your own vulnerabilities and the challenges that you're facing. And I would say probably the funny thing that I learned, because a lot of the work ethic things, you know, growing up in our house, especially with all the chores that I had, and then working in the football, I pretty had that. I had that much down, but I didn't really understand how to work smart. So I just knew I just had to keep working, and I started to learn how to work smarter. But funny enough, one of the biggest takeaways during that time was just how people's lives are so centered around money. And that was one of the biggest things as I was raising money and realizing people's attachment to money. And I would think about it and I would pray about it a lot. It struck me, like, even for myself, like when I had money, how I felt like, oh man, I'm doing good. When I didn't have it, oh man, I'm doing bad. I'm like, man, what the world is this? This paper or these dots and zeros are telling me something about myself. Like, where did I get that message? Where did I get that story? And that, I would say, has stuck with me as I think about the world today. I understand we need to make money. I understand that in order to operate in this system we do. But the fact that, you know, the value of it is so arbitrary. It's so out of our hands. And people are running models and thinking on a global scale around things that truly don't really, like, matter. So then bringing that level, because now I'm like, oh, it doesn't matter if I make money. Now, I know I need to make money, but it doesn't control me. And so that gave me a greater curiosity to explore and to really to think bigger than just, oh, how can I make money as quickly as possible? But to really say, okay, I'm not going to be controlled by this thing, but I'm really going to think more broadly about, like, what type of impact do I want to have and who do I want to become in the process?
That's dope. So how has that helped you as far as when starting your own business? I mean, you're not raising capital per se, but you still have to figure out how to cultivate these relationships, especially doing what you're doing. So how does that help you with what you're doing now? Yeah, man. And yeah, I would say because life is all about relationships. That's another big thing that I learned during that time. As an African-American, Nigerian-American man, you don't have access to a lot of those coffers of wealth. And so I would ask a lot of my friends and people I knew, and they're like, I don't have $10 a month to spare to give you money. Like, and so it was like, oh man, okay, great. So I had to really learn how to expand. And I think to some degree, learning how to operate in predominantly white spaces, because churches particularly, they have all different types of flavors and different priorities, I would say, right? And so I've learned to some degree how to be a chameleon. I wouldn't say that I am a chameleon. Like, I know who I am. I know what I believe. I know what I stand for. But I understand that when you are interacting with other people, they really don't care. They just want to feel safe. They want to feel heard. They want to feel seen. And so learning that has helped me in business to where I don't always have to be right. I don't always have to know X, Y, and Z about this person, but as long as I create a space to learn and listen. And I think that skill in business is so critical. One is having a surety around who you are is critical and important. But then also being able to create those environments for other people. And the primary driver is then how do you add value, right? It's like, you know, how do I add value to this person? Because I know that in the back of their mind, this dollar, this thing that, you know, drives our
our education, that drives our sense of worth, that drives our sense of meaning, is important to them. It's not important to me. I need it because I have to in this society, even though I try to keep my expenses low. And so then how do I connect value to this thing called money for these people and my clients? And so the posture I take is around three things, right? One is a passion to create. Really just being excited about creating things, not just creating anything, but creating value particularly. The second thing is seeking to understand. And the last thing is celebrating other people. So particularly when it comes to business, if I can be my client's number one cheerleader, like I want their business to succeed, one, because that's virtuously going to help me. But at the same time, it creates an environment for them to feel like, oh man, this guy is with me. He's in the trenches with me, and I can trust him, which is way in which, you build relationships and you can create and deliver value.
Definitely. So that's definitely one of the keys that I took from when I used to watch you doing your campus ministry. The one thing when I visited I think I visited your school once or twice during the time when you were a campus minister. And I just really used to see how you would communicate with different people. And I would study that in my mind and be like, it's really all about the relationships that you have and being able to, allow that person to feel comfortable with you. Because they may like you, they may think you're cool, but if you don't have like a certain type of connection with them, they're not going to open their wallet, There's not that you're cool with, that you're, like you said, you had your friends, but nobody has $10 to spare. It takes you have to tap into another part of them when you're building that relationship.
Yeah, I mean, if I was to break it down even further, I think one is always being willing to walk away, right? It's kind of like, there's a book I read by Henry Cloud called Integrity that talks a lot about being a trustworthy person. What does it take to be a trustworthy person? And how do you evaluate trustworthy people is knowing that somebody has your best interest in mind without you having to ask them for it. So then what does it look like for me to do that for other people, to have their best interest in mind without them having to ask me for it, without them having to beg me for it, without them having to scratch on the walls for me to have their best interest. So if that's my posture that I come into the conversation with them, it's like, oh, I want to have your best interest. And then the second thing is people love talking about themselves. And so people love to be heard. It helps them to feel seen. So there's a lot of times where I'm in those situations and I won't say anything. Before, I used to want to get a word in, or I wanted to try to make a connection, or I wanted to try to show them like, oh, I read this really cool book or something like that. And I realized people will remember you, not because of what you said, but because they said a lot. And the more I just got people talking about themselves and just learning, and you listen and you find questions and just really piquing my curiosity, that has probably accelerated my growth. I haven't read How to Win Friends and Influence People. I'm afraid it would probably teach me how to manipulate people, which I don't want to do. But I do think people want to be heard and they want you to be trustworthy.
Definitely. And one thing I like about what you said was that you have to be willing to walk away. So it's not going in there with a desperation of, I got to make this guy like me. I got to make this connection work out. You're just going in there naturally as yourself and using the tactics or pointers like you said, making sure that they feel heard and making sure that they know that you have the best interest. Just through being yourself is all that you need. You don't have to put any extra sauce on top of it. Just be yourself. You don't have to be too desperate, because people can tell when you're just trying to make them, like you. Like, oh yeah, hey, or extra laughing. And
oh my gosh.
It gets awkward when it gets like that.
Yeah. And the hard part I would say about that is it does require me to have a greater sense of stability and awareness that some of the people will never really get to know me because they don't ask questions, right? And so they're not trying to really present. And so trying to put that effort in for hey, I want you to like me. Hey, I want you to listen to me. Hey, I want you to do this. It doesn't really accomplish the goal, right, of really building a relationship. But at times, it can leave me or leave one, because you're silent so often when you're talking to somebody, you're like, oh, that person really doesn't know me. But then you also realize that, hey, if this person's not really taking the time to really get to know me, then this is a different type of relationship. And that's okay. Like, this is a different type of relationship. Like, you got those friends, but they just want to talk to you because they always kind of want to hear your wisdom, but they don't really want to do what you're asking them to do. Then you got those kind of friends. Then you got those friends who are like, hey, man, I really want to bounce this idea off of you. So it's like, then you start to kind of compartmentalize and say, hey, like Maya Angelou said, when people show you who they are, believe them. So you got going into those situations where you're not looking desperate or you're content. You have a sense of contentment. You're able then to be more solid, knowing that, hey, I want to have this best person's interest in mind, even if I am personally not the answer or I personally am not going to be able to help them. I still want to have their best interest, and then you kind of just keep it moving. There's so many people in the world, so many businesses. You got to have an abundance mindset for sure.
Definitely. You can't have a scarcity mindset. There's enough. And Sehi Keith said about the book that it has its moments, but the book will likely affirm what you already do as far as the influence people, friends and influence people book that you referred to earlier.
Oh, dope. Great. Yeah. I mean, I keep hearing, everybody keeps talking about, it's a classic. I mean, it has almost over 20,000 reviews on Amazon. So there's something in there. There's definitely something in there for sure. So
my Audible playlist to it yet, but I think it's there.
It's on the list.
It's on the list. So why did you choose to create the business that you created right now? Why is that? After, the campus ministry, you did the Coastal Cloud, you went out to the Silicon Valley for a little bit. Why do you want to create processes for businesses?
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing for me, it boils down to values. Probably one of my biggest thing that I fight within myself is being judgmental. And so, because growing up in our house, there's also a clear right way. This is the right way to say it, right way to do it, right way to take out the trash, right way to clean. There was a right way to do it.
No sugarcoat, just straight to the point.
Straight to the point. There's a right way to do it, And so I struggle with that, but I think it also is a gift in that it does give me a framework of when I understand something isn't quite right. It's like, it's kind of like if you're watching basketball these days and you're kind of like, did that guy just travel? Did he double dribble? You don't know.
Hey, what's going on? I hope you guys enjoying the episode. This is Mr. Believe, and I just want to invite you guys to follow me on IG at KEV as in Victor, B as in boy, IYI. That's at KevBiyi on IG if you want to catch any of these interviews live and in color. See you soon.
What it was, but there's just something it's not right. And I think as I worked at these companies, brilliant leaders, brilliant people. I mean, a lot of these people are, 10 times, way, smarter than I am, tons of degrees. But what was really itching inside of me was, how do I build a company around the values that matter most to me? And how do I create an environment for myself to flourish in that type of place that I can extend that to other people? And it's not perfect. I think the other thing that I learned from campus ministry is trying to save the world leads to megalomania, right? You just start thinking you know more than you really do. You're trying to be bigger than what you really are. And so instead of trying to save the world, I focus on creating a pocket of greatness. And so if my focus is on a pocket, which could just be myself, it could just be my family. Okay, if I just want to create a pocket of greatness, how do I want to show up? And so that was really the biggest thing that I saw was I wanted to build a company that had different values, especially having worked out in Silicon Valley. There was a lot of conversation around diversity. And even now there's legislation to get people to be more diverse. It's like, you know what? I want to create that for myself. I don't want somebody to feel pity for me or to just try to, patronize me and say, "Oh yeah, Greg, you can do this." It's like, you know what? Like, I can learn it. I can figure it out. I won't be the best, but I can figure it out. I can read about it. I can learn. I can get smart on it. And I wanted to create those environments for Black and brown people, for myself. So that was actually the driving force. Because seeing you know, mommy and daddy are entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurship is not glamorous. I think today, you know, the idea is, you get to wear sweatpants, and you get to wear a hoodie, you know, wherever you want.
Go to Starbucks.
You just go work in Starbucks, and you can just. And I think the glamour of entrepreneurship really turned me off, because I saw like the struggle. I saw the fight to keep your company abreast, to keep your employees paid, and so I know it's not easy. So I don't enter into this lightly, personally. And I think with time, you know, I'll be able to scale and grow. And if not, you know, amazing learning experience. But I'm confident that the whole goal is to create that pocket of greatness.
That's dope. That's dope. So, I mean, you said you understand the entrepreneur struggle, as you can see. Like, especially a small business, there's so many things that you're trying to get going just to make it from week to week, or payday to payday, make sure everybody's paid. How do you now come in to these people who have so much already on their mind and convince them that you're the guy to help them put some processes in place, put this in place, and let them know that this is going to help your business in the long run, even though they may not see it now? What are some of those challenges?
Yeah, and I wouldn't say I'm primarily a process guy. There are a lot of people who are better at processes than I am. But I'm more of a systems thinker. So systems thinker, you're thinking through inflows, outflows. You are thinking through processes and throughput. And so how can you be more productive? But in general, I focus more on like strategy. How do you put all these pieces together? I would say that I was so quick to correct you. I kind of forgot the question. What was the question again?
I was just asking, like, what are some of the challenges that you face creating, you know, helping these entrepreneurs or these small businesses? What are the challenges that you face convincing them or getting them to buy into what you're doing, as far as like...
Yeah, great question. So I wanted to get to that answer, but I wanted to correct that I'm not a process guy.
Yeah.
But the first point is Anthony Orwig has a really great book called Jobs to Be Done. And I didn't know this before I got it. I had like the conceptual framework of create value. And I think every entrepreneur needs to think about how are they creating value. That's like the point number one, right? But what Anthony focuses in on is what job is actually getting done. Like when somebody hires you, like what is the core job they're looking to get done? So any business has a network of suppliers and partners. So you are, you know, in the business of security. But if you just said, hey, I'm doing security, but the real job is, hey, I want to make sure nobody steals my SUV, right? So the job is, if you go in there and you focus on the job and you communicate what the job is, like, oh, I'll make sure your SUV is protected. It speaks to what their felt need is. And so I would say that the biggest, encouragement or challenge I would give to an entrepreneur is to really focus that in. So when I go into a business, my whole focus is I'm trying to understand what is a real job. So you say, oh, I want my business to grow. Okay, then why is it not growing right now? Like, you know, what have you been doing? And then you begin to parse it out piece by piece. And because I've done research and because I'm growing my own business, I get a better understanding of what are the missing links and what are the missing pieces and what things they can do differently. And so that I feel is one, by getting people to talk about themselves, you know, coming in, you know, really wanting to be trustworthy and things of that nature. Then allows you to really learn a lot. And so I would say the second piece is focusing. The first piece is focus on the job. Second piece is really listen to what their felt pain is. And then the third step is, by that time, I have enough information to where I'm speaking directly to it. And then I'm like, when can we get started? You know, we could start, you know, if this is as bad as you say it is, why didn't we start yesterday? And so, you know, then you start to kind of put some gentle pressure on to say, like, if this pain is that serious, how much is it worth to you to really get it resolved? You know.
That's good. That's good. So now that you've been in business and you've been doing this, somebody asked a question. Say hi, Keith. But we're going to get to the questions at the end. So if you could put your question in the question box at the bottom of your screen. I don't think you can see it on your screen, but it's a question at the bottom of your screen. Tap it in there, and then at the end, after we do the this and that segment, we'll put Greg, Mr. Diet's lead on the hot seat with your questions. So, had there been a time, I know your business is still pretty young.
Very young, very young.
Where you thought you wanted to give it up and try something different or put it down? And then, how did you overcome that hurdle?
Yeah, you know, I'm obviously we're in a pandemic, and to start a business during a pandemic is kind of crazy. It's you have to have a level of audacity, and I think I got to the point last year where it was so clear that I just needed to make this step and try to make this work. So as the pandemic hit and the thought of like, how do I get new business? You know, that did in some ways like enter my mind, like, man, maybe I should apply somewhere else. Maybe now is just not the right time. And I think that's, if you're always asking that question, it's never going to be the right time. Right. And so, the fortunate thing is I've had clients. I've had business to keep me busy, and so I haven't had enough time to think about getting out of it because I'm like I still need to continue to deliver on what I said I would, and so I haven't had a lot of time to think about it. This is less than a year. October will be 1 year officially, so I'm almost at 1 year anniversary.
Congratulations!
But yeah, I think. The things that have made me pause and wonder is when I found myself doing things that I didn't really want to do, or I found myself working with people who didn't really value my input, and then was like, man, like, I don't want to keep doing this. But then I started to realize, like, oh, it's not me, it's them. Like, oh, I need a different you. Like, you need to change, not me. Like, I need a different you. And so I'm starting to put that framework gave me clarity to realize, like, okay, I can stay in this. I just need to make sure I'm working with the right type of people and have the right type of partners around.
That's good. That's good. That's good lessons right there to learn. So what have been your biggest accomplishments? What have been some of your biggest accomplishments thus far?
Well, I mean, yeah, I would love to hear what my clients say about that. I think for me personally, it's just getting started. You know, I'm pretty proud of myself for doing that. I'll be releasing my website soon, so I'm really proud of that. It's been a lot of fun working on. I think my biggest accomplishment is, and this is going to sound really cheesy, because it really connects with what you're doing, is believing in myself more. I think part of the tension of being an entrepreneur or just existing in a world that at times feels so violent and so desperate, but then there's so much hope and so much beauty at the same time, is just wondering, like, man, do I have what it takes? And feeling like, oh yeah, I do have what it takes. And I think other people will say that to you, but then when you say it to yourself and then you really do it, I think that's probably been the greatest thing. Actually, yeah, that's been good.
There you go, man. Just believe in yourself. That's what I'm trying to get everybody to do, man. What's some of your biggest lessons that you've taken away?
Man, I got this one from campus ministry, but it's the idea of staying a chapter ahead. And so oftentimes, you know, clients will have issues or problems, and I've never done some of these things before, but then it's like, okay, I'll figure it out. And, you know, because I've seen the problem or I've seen a potential solution before, excuse me, that allows me to at least know what direction to go into and maybe pivot or things of that nature. But why that's helpful is it relieves myself of the pressure of having to be an expert on everything. Because there's so many different things that come up, so many different challenges and problems, blah, blah, blah. And there's no way you can just be an expert in everything. So now to alleviate that pressure is just say, hey, I'll just stay a chapter ahead and continue to learn. So that's probably it. Stay a chapter ahead.
That's dope. That's dope. Definitely be prepared. That's a good way right there. So when you get into the situations, like when the pandemic hit, for some people it was very stressful. And you can start to have stress build up around you. Maybe you have deadlines, things coming up. How do you cope with stress or stressful situations?
Yeah, I would say that, unfortunately, I think my default is I just keep pressing on. This is why I have to be more emotionally responsible. But in general, I actually think about death a lot. This is part of where Die to Lead comes from, is the thought that how would I live how would I relate to my dad differently if he died today? Like, how would I relate to myself differently if X happened? And so, just as a thought experiment, what I find is generally it brings me to a greater place of generosity, to a greater place of love, to a greater place of hope. So when the pandemic hit, I was actually kind of giddy. I was like, man, there's going to be so many good lessons and things that's going to happen. But I realized that not everybody around me is going to feel that same way. So I got to kind of hold it back a little bit. And I was reading a book about, death when the pandemic hit. I was just reading about death all the time, watching videos about death. And because I think the power of death is that it's inevitable, but yet it's always a surprise. It's like everyone knows that we're all going to die. The death rate has always been 100%, or we can say 99.9 if you believe that Enoch was taken up, and that he didn't die. But it's that it's so inevitable, then why don't we really reflect on it? And I think this pandemic really, really challenged me to dig deeper into some of the things that I was already thinking about and processing about, and like my Die to Lead and all of this stuff. So I felt like, man, I was actually on to something. So yeah, that's how I felt.
Okay. So I've been asking people this question, and I know that for most people, a 5-year plan is kind of like out of the question right now. But you should still have a vision for your life and where you would suspect to see yourself. Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Yeah, 5 years. Well, I just remembered this. So this is what I'm going to do. Because I feel like I'm not answering the questions. So I'm going to try and just answer them succinctly first. And then I'll just kind of riff. So although I hold stress in a lot, I also journal. Journaling, whether it's first thing in the morning or as things continue to get tied up in my head, that really helps a lot. And also just prayer. That definitely helps me as well to kind of release and recognize that there's things that are bigger than myself that I just can't figure out right now. In terms of 5-year plan, I definitely want to, my career goal is to create 100,000 jobs. So in 5 years, I would hope to have put a dent in that, and also made enough money. I don't know what the number necessarily is. I have some targets, but $1 million is definitely one. Like that seems like a clear one. That's an easy one to grab for. The other thing is, I would love to travel and work abroad, even for a year or something like that. That'd be dope. So maybe in 5 years I'll be abroad, or maybe during the next 5 years I'll do that. The other thing is I am also working with an initiative, let's call it that, to
Hey, it's Mr. Believe, and I'm here to tell you about Titan Protective Services, where they protect what matters most to you. Titan Protective Services provides innovative security solutions for apartment complexes, rental properties, and condominiums. We believe that as a family-run company, we are here to make sure your property is taken care of and protected from vandalism, theft, and destruction. Contact us today for your security needs. Visit www.titanproserv.com today or call us at 844-39-TITAN. That's 844-39-TITAN.
I would say to really assist women and men who are returning citizens who are formerly incarcerated to get into technology. And I think if we're waiting for the big tech companies to do it, the majority of their workforce are already contractors. So that already puts in perspective as to the type of security they really want to offer anyone, period. And then you talk about offering that to people of color who may not be from the same colleges or from the same social circles. But there are a lot of other opportunities out there. So creating those type of pathways. So let's just say 10 people, 2 people a year over the next 5 years would be great as well.
That's dope. That's some good ambitious right there. Definitely 100,000 jobs. That's definitely one of my goals, to create that many jobs for people.
Yeah, directly or indirectly. You know, it could be through investments, or it could be, you know, through solution finders or other stuff like that, for sure.
Definitely. That's dope. So, I mean, since you're still young in your business, and I'm pretty sure a lot of the mistakes that you learned were lessons, but is there any mistakes that you could probably pinpoint and say that was kind of like a waste of time? Something that you probably could have skipped over, or something that you knew you didn't need to do, but you did anyway?
I don't know. I think everything so far has been really valuable because it's given me better clarity on what I want to do and how I want to do things. Mm-hmm. Mistakes to avoid. I can't think of any just now. I mean, I think unfortunately, because I'm just saying all the mistakes were valuable. But
that's good. That means you didn't make any useless mistakes.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Do you have any tips for any entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I feel like what I said earlier may have been tips. I would just, if I was to give a basic tip, which I'm sure everybody's already heard, is don't trade dollars for time.
Not on this podcast. Nobody said that yet on this podcast.
Yeah, don't do that. That's a waste.
I try to tell my guys that all the time. I said, you can try to work as many hours as you want, but you can never work as many hours as what you think you need to make the money that you want for yourself.
Yeah.
You to leverage your time and your money.
Yeah, think creatively, Think creatively but just don't trade dollars for time. That's not the way to go.
It's not the way to go. It's a good way to start, but it's not the way to go.
For sure.
So before we get into our This or That segment, I want to let everybody know that's joined us. If you have any questions for Mr. Dotsley, Mr. Greg, drop your questions in the question box below, and we'll definitely put them on the hot seat. We have your questions. We have a question waiting for us there, as well as if anybody wants to join the Believe in Yourself community, I like that flag. Just text BIY to 31996, BIY to 31996. And this month's Black Dollar Challenge recipients are Unique African Boutique. They're going to be providing the prize for your dollar donation to hashtag IBelieve15. And your donations are going to go to support the Plan B Project, which is a project which is a nonprofit organization that teaches people or youth how to get into the industry behind the scenes. There's many people, there's actors, there's everybody that's in front, but there's a camera guy, there's a film crew, there's an editor, there's a director, and all those jobs that we don't see. This helps the kids understand different avenues, different ways that they can get involved into the arts. So, this or that, bro. This or that. We're going to figure out what you like.
All right, man.
Audiobooks or podcasts?
Audiobooks.
Okay. What audiobooks would you prescribe for some of our listeners?
Man, depending on what you're trying to learn, But one of the most influential books I've listened to and have read is Justice by Michael Sandel.
I'm gonna get into that. Justice by Michael Sandel. Okay, that's a good one. Which app, and I know you're not really a social media guy, but which app would you prefer? Facebook or Instagram?
Man, I just would start all over. I don't want either one of them, honestly, but I think Instagram. Yeah.
Okay. Why? Why you choose Instagram?
I mean, I rarely am on Facebook, so I guess Instagram.
Okay. Chosen by default.
Yeah, I guess.
So this next question is a music question.
All right.
We spoke earlier, so I'm gonna take it back. I'm gonna take it back for you a little bit. Let's go back in the days.
All right, here we go.
Which group would you prefer? Outkast or Bone Thugs?
Outkast, 100.
Outkast, 100%. Okay, I like that.
Outkast.
I remember you put me onto that. What was it? East 1999 or something about Bone Thugs. Something on the other.
Yeah,
you're much more the music head back in the day more than I was.
I know, yeah.
So this next question is a sports question. So you and I, we both, and our sister, we all were athletes at one point in our college career. And recently the NCAA, they've been having, California just passed the law saying that kids can now make money off their likeness. I think Florida just recently got involved with that as well.
Yeah, wow, that's big.
There was some talks of players protesting this season until they get paid. I don't know how far that has gone, but what are your thoughts on it as a former athlete?
Yeah, man, I definitely think the players should be getting paid. I think the entire notion of amateurism is exploitative. Yes. I think it is very intentional, and it's couched behind the idea of education, which has its own history and its own complexities. So I would say definitely play the players, we'll see how much money. I mean, it's so interesting. If we live in a free market, why is it that there are always bodies of people or authorities, not necessarily regulators, because people want to blame the regulators, but there's bodies of people who are so incentivized to not pay people fairly that the markets aren't really free. So I would say pay the players.
Definitely, that's my sentiment as well, bro. I think, like you said, it's just the history of it, and right now it's just at this point, it's almost on the borderline slavery the way they're running it right now, especially with the millions that they're making off of these players. It's ridiculous at this point, Especially, I think I heard the Big Ten or one of those commissioners is making like $5 million a year, and then you have the coaches that are making millions of dollars a year, but a player can't take $20 for somebody to buy them lunch. Like, it's ridiculous.
That's not even counting the fact that they probably get discounts on cars, their house down payment, because most of those schools will have credit unions. I mean, you think about the network effects of how much value they get from the university and players. The benefit that players get is either the brand name of the university they went to, and they get no debt. Like, those things are significant, but you're not able to fully apply yourself in the education. And unless you play the game differently. There's a lot of people who play the game. There's people who get that scholarship, and then they know that they could probably put more effort in, and then they really don't. I know when I went to college, we had a lot of those. They were just like, no, I'm just here to get my scholarship, and I'm going to get my education. So, yeah, but they should pay the players for sure.
Definitely. I agree with that. And it'll work itself out. Markets always regulate themselves. The players will.
Not always. Markets aren't that smart.
Well, I feel like this is one that it needs to get the chance to.
Markets aren't that smart.
The last one I want to ask everybody I'm a little bit of a cookie monster. So I want to know which would you prefer, chocolate chip or the Oreos?
Man, well, it depends on the type of chocolate chip. So I have a very particular type of, like the quality of the chocolate chip. It can't be one of those, almost like a biscuit. It can't be like that, where it's crispy and hard. It has to be a nice double chocolate.
Yeah, like the Copperfield chocolate chip cookies.
Yeah, it has to be like that. But if I can't get one of those, I'm definitely going to get an Oreo.
Definitely. I have the same sentiment. But I like my Oreos frozen. I don't know if you still like yours frozen. I know we used to put cookies in the freezer as kids, so I think that's why I like my cookies nice and frozen.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't know that's why we put them in the freezer. I thought we put them in the freezer because they last longer. Now I know it's just a matter of preference.
No, I think our parents did it because it lasted longer. But now I do it not just for it to last longer. I do it because I prefer it. I actually prefer it frozen to room temperature.
I can see that. Oreos are good to dip when they're frozen, for sure.
Definitely. So let's see this hot seat question that we got.
Hot seat.
How did you come to Die to Lead as your name?
Yeah. I would say when I think about leadership and I think about depth, I think that kind of reflection influenced the name. Now, why did I make that my Instagram name? Was I don't know. I was just kind of like, I don't want to put my name and just kind of be basic, but I figured Die to Lead would be unique. And I also made that my license plate. So I just kind of went with Die to Lead.
That's dope. Okay. And I think our mom had a question. She didn't put it in the box, but I think you can see it on the screen. How is your thinking now, Greg?
I need some clarity on what mommy means by my thinking now. I'm thinking about a lot of things, but I'm not sure what specifically mommy's talking about there. So I don't know if you can write in or text us to let us know what specifically.
I don't know. I think mom was probably referring to what you said earlier, but maybe she'll type it in before we end. We've got about a minute and 30 seconds on this live. So I just want to say before we let you go, before we end all the way, bro, thank you for coming on this podcast, man.
No doubt, man.
You're always dropping gems for me. I know I took a lot of value out of this, and I just love the fact that what you're doing for businesses, I feel like is very much needed in the space for small businesses. Because a lot of times, not only processes, but systems, we need those things to help us become more efficient and not be so bogged down with everything that's going on.
Okay, here it goes. It's a clarification.
You said you think about that a lot. You got about 45 seconds. You can answer that question and tell everybody how they can get in contact with you.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, Mommy, I can answer that question later. I don't have enough time to answer that on 45 seconds. Yeah, you can message me here on Instagram. I will check it. I will check it. I'd probably check it like once a month. But if you have a real emergency, definitely reach out to Kev, and then he'll get in touch with me. My website's going to be up soon, sf-gbl.com, Solution Finders Global. So, yeah.
All right. Thank you, bro, for joining us. And Instagram's going to kick us off, so we'll catch you guys on the next one.
This show is brought to you by Believe in Yourself. Don't forget to visit IBelieveInMeInc.com. That's IBelieveInMeInc.com for all your BIY swag. That's I Believe in Me, Inc. for all your DIY swag. And we'll see you on the next episode.